I want to tell you about 20, not 5, not 10, but 20 houseplants you can grow in your aquarium to help filter the water. And there are other benefits as well. These 20 are some of the plants I've been growing out of my aquariums for multiple years now, and they have transformed my fish keeping experience by helping filter excess nutrients from the water, by giving my fish a more natural habitat to live in, and by bringing a new dimension of beauty into my life. This has been a game changer for me in this hobby, and it can be for you as well. Later, I'm going to answer a big question I get asked frequently about growing these plants hydroponically. Well, let's start with one of my favorites, Golden Goddess Philodendron, a bold, bright, and lush plant. It adds so much color above the tank, and those big golden leaves really make a statement. I do recommend staking it somehow with a tree branch or having something to attach it to. It can be a light hog when growing vertically, casting a noticeable shadow over smaller plants below, which is important to know when selecting other plants to go with it. But you can remove the lower leaves like I have here in order to allow more light to come through. Next is parlor palm, a slower growing plant, but another one of my favorites, partly because it is so low maintenance and adds a finer palm, almost bamboo-like leaf texture. It can get tall over time, and I recommend spacing out the individual plants so that they don't crowd each other. I've grown it in 10-gallon tanks all the way up to 75-gallon, so it is definitely a versatile option. Spider plant is so much fun to grow, and it's easy to propagate from the small plantlets. The trick is to keep the crown above the water when propagating and watch those amazing roots grow all the way down to the substrate. That's exactly what I did here. The spider plant roots made a wonderful background to this 10-gallon betta tank. Dwarf umbrella sedge is one of the toughest plants around, and despite the name, it can still reach up to 4 feet tall and does require dividing from time to time. I like to grow it in media like gravel or lava rocks to keep it anchored in place. It's best suited for large tanks or outdoor ponds. Syngonium, a semi-vining plant with distinctive arrowhead-shaped leaves, is easily propagated from cuttings. It can grow well in a loose substrate such as lava rock or with the roots directly in the water. Here it is growing in my stock tank pond in the greenhouse. Hemagraphis, or waffle plant, is another one that propagates easily by cuttings. It likes medium to high light and will even bloom. There are 3 varieties that all have grown well for me out of a fish tank, and it is one of many non-toxic houseplants to grow hydroponically. Probably one of the most fun and unusual looking plants you will ever grow out of your tank is ribbon bush. It propagates easily from cuttings, and over time it can get big and require staking, or you can prune it to a smaller size. And the roots are naturally very fine and dark in color. Next are a few varieties of Monstera. Monstera deliciosa, which gets quite large and looks very dramatic and can create an amazing jungle over your tank. And then the smaller Swiss cheese plant, Monstera adansini, which is a very manageable size and suitable for a variety of tank sizes. Both grow very well and give you a profound exotic leaf pattern for your setup. And then there's mini Monstera, which is actually a Rhaphidophora, but has that similar split leaf pattern and growth habit. It's hard to believe, but this succulent can grow quite well in water. There are many varieties of Sansevieria. This one is a cylindrical snake plant and has almost doubled in size in a year. Even though peace lily is one of the most common riparian plants, growing them out of my tanks never gets old. Their incredible leaves, flowers, and roots help create an amazing ecosystem for my fish, and they add a level of beauty that is just unparalleled. No matter how many plant varieties I grow, there will always be room for peace lily in my tanks. It grows best for me in medium light and plenty of room for the leaves and roots to spread out. And when it gets too large, I can divide the clump and I have more plants to grow. I've been growing 2 varieties of ficus out of my tanks, ginseng ficus and fiddle leaf fig. And both have adapted relatively quickly to the water and have been sending out lush roots into the aquariums. They are top heavy and definitely need to be grown in a planter for stabilization. And temperature doesn't seem to matter very much either. One has been in a tank that's been heated at a constant 70 degrees, and the other has been unheated with temperatures dipping below 60. Both have done equally well. If you're looking for a vibrant color to add to your riparium, then red Chinese evergreen is a great option. I grow mine from cuttings and support them in a planter with a coarse media. They only grow about 1 foot tall and look great next to dark green or even yellow green foliage plants. They are slow growing and have grown best for me in medium light. Another very common houseplant to grow hydroponically, however, Lucky Bamboo's versatility should not be underestimated. It can be kept short or grown tall above water, but will sometimes sprout leaves below water and grow through and up out of it. It can grow in water only, or it can be planted directly into the tank substrate or in a planter. It seems like we could do anything with it. This is what makes it the ultimate beginner plant, but it can still hold surprises for the more experienced aquarists. I would consider money tree to be a plant for intermediate experience level. It took me several months to get it fully adapted to grow in the water, and it has been slow growing over the past 2 years, but still a worthwhile challenge and still one that I want to experiment with further. Another superbly colorful option is inch plant, also known as wandering Jew, and boy does it wander. It has been best managed with something to grow on, like a tree branch. It turns a bright reddish purple with more light. It roots easily from cuttings. I do like to keep the stems at or above the water line. And for me, it does eventually play out after a year or so, but it's easily started again from cuttings. Nerve plant, or Phytonia, has a fantastic leaf pattern with those highlighted veins, and is another non-toxic option if you have cats or dogs around. I grow it with the roots hanging freely in the water, and I have not been able to propagate it from cuttings successfully, so instead I just take a potted plant, wash the roots off, and adapt it to the water. Last but definitely not least is Pothos. By now it seems like everyone knows about growing this plant out of an aquarium, but may not realize there are multiple varieties with different leaf shapes and sizes and colors to choose from, and it's such a versatile plant. I still enjoy growing it, and it still surprises me with what it's capable of. I tell you what, we are not done yet. I'll give you one more plant, the red mangrove tree. These trees are normally associated with saltwater or brackish environments, but they can also grow in fresh water. Eventually, long prop roots will support the tree as it grows upward, and it will create a vibrant underwater ecosystem. Now, all these plants that I've shown you today are not the only ones that can grow out of your aquarium. There are many more, and I'm always experimenting with new plant varieties, trying to discover new possibilities, as well as learning from other hobbyists. Now let's answer the big question that I am frequently asked about growing these plants in water. How can these houseplants grow in the water and not get root rot? Root rot in terrestrial plants happens when the soil has poor drainage and there is too much water. The soil gets waterlogged, the roots can't get oxygen, which they need, and they rot. These plants can grow in the water because there is plenty of oxygen in the water. Now, that being said, houseplants can still get root rot growing hydroponically, primarily during the adaptation phase when you are transitioning these plants to grow hydroponically. If the conditions aren't right, they can get rot and die. This still happens to me from time to time. It's not the norm, but it does still happen sometimes. Now, it's important to mention it's not unusual for these plants to shed their terrestrial roots in order to grow new water-adapted roots. This is very normal and is very different than root rot, which can kill the plant. Now, to learn more about adapting these houseplants to grow in an aquarium, check out this next video.